Hello guys. Welcome back to my channel, a channel that discusses very dramatic movie stories, guys. In this video, I'll take you to watch a very dramatic movie about this story, entitled Daddy's Birthday Became Daughter's Funeral. Before this story begins, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Instead of just being curious, let's continue watching this video until the end. Okay?
The morning was supposed to be a celebration of life and love, a milestone marked by laughter and the sweet scent of a homemade birthday cake. Maria and her young daughter, Natalie, were on their way to surprise Logan, Maria's husband and the high-ranking head doctor, for his birthday. Natalie sat in the back seat, clutching a cake she had decorated with her own small, shaky hands, her eyes bright with the anticipation of seeing her father's face light up. She had even picked out a special gift, a T-Rex toy, convinced her daddy was a superhero who could conquer any monster. But the festive atmosphere was obliterated in a heartbeat when a massive collision sent their car spinning into a nightmare of twisted metal and shattered glass. Maria drifted in and out of consciousness, the world a blur of crimson and cold steel, while Natalia's cries for her superhero daddy echoed through the wreckage. Unaware that the ferryman she was rushing to celebrate would soon become the architect of her final moments, Logan Goldson, trapped in the bubble of his own professional arrogance and the toxic bond with his struggling single mother friend Catherine, was busy attending to another accident involving Catherine and her son Dustin. When Maria's desperate call finally reached him, her voice a ragged plea for help as Natalie bled out, Logan didn't hear a grieving wife. He heard a jealous woman trying to sabotage his time with Catherine. "Stop lying about Natalie to get my attention," he roared into the phone, his ego blinding him to the genuine terror in Maria's tone. His neglect turned lethal when he arrived at the crash site as the commanding physician. Violating every medical protocol in the book, Logan prioritized Catherine and Dustin, ordering the only available ambulance to leave the scene without checking the other vehicle, the one containing his own dying child. He abandoned his family in the shadows of the road, convinced that Maria was merely throwing a tantrum, while Natalia's rare renal blood poured onto the asphalt, a life force fading because her only compatible donor refused to believe she was even hurt. The hospital hallways became a theater of absolute cruelty as Maria finally arrived, disheveled and broken, carrying the weight of Natalia's cold, lifeless body in her soul. She found Logan celebrating his birthday with Catherine, who played the role of the victim to perfection. When Maria broke the news that Natalie was dead, that she had succumbed to blood loss because Logan wouldn't answer his phone, Logan didn't collapse in grief. Instead, he unleashed a torrent of verbal abuse, accusing Maria of being a vile, manipulative woman who would fake a child's death to win a custody battle. He stood by as Catherine insulted Natalia's memory, even suggesting that if Maria didn't want the brat, Catherine would raise her. The ultimate betrayal was cemented when Logan looked at the death certificate and the surgical reports and dismissed the mass forgeries. He chose the comfort of a layoff over the devastating truth of his own failure, leaving Maria with no more choice but to seek a divorce and plan a funeral that should have been a birthday party, while Logan remained a superhero in his own mind, presiding over a kingdom of ghosts and calculated deceit. The air in the sterile hospital corridor felt as though it had been sucked out, leaving Maria gasping in a vacuum of disbelief. She looked at Logan, the man who had promised to protect them from every storm, and saw only a hollow shell of a man, his white doctor's coat looking like a shroud rather than a symbol of healing. Beside him, Catherine adjusted her fake bandage with a smirk that she quickly masked as a frown when Logan turned her way. The injustice of the moment was so thick it was physical. Maria felt the phantom weight of Natalia's hand in hers, a hand that was now cold and still in the morgue below. She realized that Logan wasn't just a negligent actor. He was a stranger who had traded his daughter as life for the ego boost of being Catherine as savior. The birthday cake Natalie had made was probably still sitting in the wreckage of the car, attracting flies, just like the love Maria once had for this monster was now rotting in real time. Maria's voice, when she finally spoke, was not the scream Logan expected. It was a cold, dead whisper that carried more weight than any shout. She looked him straight in the eye, ignoring Catherine's faint whimpers of fear. "You have 3 days, Logan. 3 days until the cremation. If you have any shred of a soul left, you will be at 28 Cleveland Road." Not as a doctor, but as a father who finally sees his child. Logan scoffed, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture one of ultimate defiance. "I'm not following you into your delusions, Maria. Pack your bags. I'm done with your lies. Natalie is probably at your mother's house right now, laughing at how you fooled everyone. He turned his butt on her, guiding Catherine away with a gentleness that Natalie had begged for all for the phone just an hour prior. Maria watched them go, her heart turning to stone, her resolve to destroy his career and his reputation becoming the only thing keeping her upright. The journey back to their empty home was a descent into a silent purgatory. Every tie left on the floor, every half-finished drawing on the refrigerator, was a jagged piece of glass cutting into Maria's consciousness. She sat in the middle of Natalia's room, the scent of lavender and baby shampoo still clinging to the pillowcases. She remembered Natalia's voice from that morning, asking if Daddy would make her a superhero cake in return. The irony was a poison. Maria picked up the phone and dialed William, her childhood friend and the most ruthless lawyer in the city. When William answered, Maria didn't cry. She simply told him the facts. Natalie was dead, Logan had bypassed her in the ambulance, and Catherine was the reason for the delay. William, who had always seen through Logan's facade, promised to burn Logan's world to the ground. He will lose his mind when the truth finally catches him, William vowed, his voice a steady anchor in her sea of grief. Oh, at the hospital, he was the hero who had saved Dustin's leg and comforted a traumatized Catherine. He accepted birthday wishes from his staff, smiling and nodding, while internally he pushed away the nagging doubt that Maria's eyes had looked too dead to be acting. Catherine stayed close, her presence a constant distraction. She would mention Natalia's name with a sigh, saying how sad it was that a child had such an unstable mother. Logan drank the poison willingly, needing to believe Catherine so he wouldn't have to face the possibility that he had committed the ultimate medical and paternal sin. He even went as far as to file for a restraining order against Maria, convinced she would try to use the fake funeral to kidnap Natalie from wherever she was actually hiding. He was building a fortress of denial, unaware that William was already dismantling the foundation from the outside. Catherine, however, was starting to panic. She knew exactly what had happened at the crash site. She had seen Maria's car. She had heard the child's cries. She had intentionally faked a fainting spell to ensure Logan stayed focused on her. Now, she needed to make sure the evidence disappeared. She spent her recovery time in Logan's office, pretending to organize his files while actually hunting for the paramedics' preliminary reports. She found the folder marked crash site by fatalities and her heart skipped a beat. Inside was the photo of the silver sedan Maria's car and the report detailing the death of a 6-year-old female due to exsanguination. The name Natalie Goldson was typed in bold at the top. Catherine's hands shook as she realized the paper in her hand was the smoking gun. If Logan saw this, his devotion to her would turn into a murderous rage. She tucked the file under her shirt, her mind racing for a way to destroy it before the 3-day deadline Maria had set. While Catherine plotted, Maria was at the funeral home, standing over a small, white casket. She had dressed Natalie in her favorite yellow dress, the one she wanted to wear for her father's party. The room was filled with white lilies, their fragrance overwhelming and funereal. Maria spoke to Natalie as if she were just sleeping, promising her that the superhero who failed her would finally be forced to face his true reflection. William stood in the doorway, watching his friend with a mixture of pity and admiration. He had already gathered the GPS data from the ambulance and the voice recordings of the dispatch center. He had the proof that Logan had explicitly ordered the medics to ignore the silver sedan. "The trap is set, Maria," William whispered. "Tomorrow, at the cremation site, Logan will finally have to look at what he's done. There will be no more Catherine to hide behind when the casket is opened." The third day dawned with a heavy, gray sky that seemed to weep for the innocent soul being laid to rest. Logan was at the hospital, preparing for a high-level surgery, when a courier delivered a final envelope. Inside was a single photo, the T-Rex toy Natalie had been holding, now crushed and covered in blood, with a note that said, "Superheroes don't leave their sidekicks to die." The image pierced through Logan's armor for a split second. He felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. He looked at Dustin, who was happily playing with a new set of blocks Logan had bought him, and for the first time, the child's laughter felt like a mockery. Catherine entered the room, sensing his shift in mood. "It's just more of her sick games, Logan. Don't let her ruin your day. We have the discharge papers ready. We can go to the park together." But Logan's feet wouldn't move toward Catherine. They wanted to move toward 28 Cleveland Road. Unable to suppress the instinct any longer, Logan told Catherine he had an emergency consult and drove toward the address Maria had provided. Catherine, sensing the end was near, followed him in her own car, her eyes frantic. Logan arrived at the small chapel, seeing the black cars and the grieving relatives he recognized from Maria's side of the family. He still wanted to believe it was a play, a massive, expensive prank designed to break him. He walked into the chapel with a confident stride, his doctor's coat flapping behind him, looking like he was sure to call the bluff. But as he stepped into the nave, the smell of incense and lilies hit him like a physical blow. He saw Maria standing by the altar, her face a mask of stone, and behind her, the small, white casket that couldn't possibly be a prop. "Where is she, Maria? Where are you hiding my daughter?" Logan demanded, his voice echoing through the sacred space, drawing gasps of horror from the mourners. Maria didn't flinch. She stepped aside, revealing the open lid of the casket. Logan's heart stopped. He moved forward, his legs suddenly feeling like lead. He looked down and saw Natalie. He saw the yellow dress. He saw the small, pale face that used to light up when he came home from work. But there was no more light now. There was only the stillness of death. The reality hit him with the force of a 1,000-ton hammer. He fell to his knees, his hands clutching the edge of the wood. "No more, no more, no more, no more. Natalie, baby, wake up. Daddy's here. I'm here now." But the superhero was 3 days too late, and the sidekick was never coming back. The silence that followed Logan's collapse was broken only by the sound of Maria's cold, rhythmic footsteps as she approached him. She looked down at the man who had been her world and saw only the murderer of her child. "She waited for you, Logan, in that car, with her legs crushed and her blood flowing out. She told me that her superhero daddy was coming to save us. She made me promise that he wouldn't be mad at you for being late." Logan let out a sob that sounded like a wounded animal, his forehead resting against the cold satin of the casket. "I didn't know. Maria, I swear, I thought you were lying." Maria grabbed him by the collar of his expensive coat, forcing him to look at the daughter he had abandoned. "You didn't want to know. You wanted Catherine. You wanted to be the hero for a woman who wasn't even hurt, while your own daughter was begging for the blood only you could give her." Catherine watched from the back of the chapel, her face pale with terror. She tried to turn and run, but William was there, blocking the exit. He held up a digital tablet, playing the recording of the crash site dispatch. Logan's voice boomed through the speakers, clear and unmistakable. "Ignore the other car. It's just my wife being dramatic. Get Catherine to there now." The mourners looked at Logan with absolute loathing. The medical staff who had followed him to the funeral, thinking they were supporting a grieving father, backed away as if he were a leper. Logan looked up at the screen, his own words condemning him more effectively than any judge ever could. He realized in that moment that he had not just lost a daughter, he had orchestrated her execution. The cremation ceremony proceeded despite Logan's frantic, pathetic pleas to fix it. He watched, held back by security, as the casket was wheeled toward the flames. He screamed Natalia's name until his voice gave out, but the fire didn't care about his status or his medical degrees. Maria stood by the furnace, her expression one of grim satisfaction. When the process was over and she was handed the small, warm urn, she walked past Logan without a single look. She handed him a folder, the divorce papers, and a copy of the lawsuit for $50 million in malpractice and wrongful death. "Hiduplah dalam penyesalan, Logan. Karena setiap kali kamu menutup mata, kamu akan melihat Natalie di jalanan itu, menunggu ayah yang tidak pernah datang." The weeks following the funeral were a slow-motion car crash for Logan's career. William released the dispatch recordings and the medical reports to the press. The superhero doctor became a national pariah. His medical license was revoked in a public hearing where Maria sat in the front row, holding Natalia's urn. Logan sat at the defense table, his hair unkempt, his eyes sunken and bloodshot. He had lost his job, his home, and his friends. Catherine was arrested for her role in the accident and for tampering with evidence, her struggling mother act failing to move the jury. Logan was left with nothing but the silence of his empty apartment and the constant, rhythmic ticking of a clock that reminded him of Natalia's fading heartbeat. In his darkest moments, Logan would find himself driving to the location of the accident. He would sit in the tall grass by the side of the road, clutching the T-Rex toy he had retrieved from the evidence locker. He would talk to the ayah, apologizing to Natalie, promising her that he would make it up to her in the next life. He began to see Natalie in every little girl with pigtails, every child laughing in a park. But when he would reach out, the vision would vanish, replaced by the memory of the cold, white casket. He was a man living in a waking nightmare, a prisoner of his own arrogance. He realized that the greatest birthday gift he could have ever received was a daughter who loved him. And he had thrown it away for a woman who didn't even know his middle name. Maria, meanwhile, channeled her grief into a new purpose. She used the settlement money from the lawsuit to build the Natalie Goldson Memorial Blood Bank, focusing specifically on rare blood types like renal. She wanted to ensure that no more other family would ever have to wait for a hero who refused to show up. William remained by her side, a constant source of support as she navigated her new life as a philanthropist. Maria never remarried. Her heart belonged to the little girl in the yellow dress. She found peace in the smiles of the children her foundation helped, knowing that Natalia's death had become a catalyst for thousands of lives being saved. The story of the superhero daddy became a cautionary tale in medical schools across the globe. Professors would use Logan's case to teach the importance of humility and the dangers of personal bias in emergency medicine. They would show the photo of the crushed T-Rex toy as a reminder that behind every patient file is a human life, a family, and a child who believes their doctor is a god. Logan's name was erased from the hospital walls, but his failure became a permanent part of the curriculum, a legacy of shame that ensured no more other doctor would make the same fatal mistake. On what would have been Natalia's 7th birthday, Maria visited her daughter's favorite park. She sat on the bench where Natalie used to swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Natalia's favorite colors. She felt a gentle breeze on her cheek, like a ghostly kiss. At the same time, miles away, Logan sat in a dimly lit room, staring at a single birthday candle he had lit for his daughter. As the flame flickered and died, he whispered "Happy birthday, Natalie," into the darkness. But the only response was the silence of a house that would never again hear the sound of a child's laughter. The debt of his birthday was paid in full, and the price had been his daughter's life. The internal architecture of the Goldson Hospital underwent a radical transformation following the scandal. The board of directors, terrified of further litigation, implemented a Natalie protocol which stripped head doctors of the power to override emergency triage decisions at crash sites without a secondary consult. It was a cold comfort to Maria, but it was a victory nonetheless. She spent her days at the foundation, her hair now touched with strands of gray that hadn't been so before the accident. She became a fierce advocate for patient rights, her name becoming synonymous with integrity and the relentless pursuit of truth. She refused to let Natalia's death be just a statistic. She made it a movement that challenged the very core of the medical establishment. Logan's descent into obscurity was accompanied by a deteriorating mental state. He began to suffer from vivid hallucinations. Convinced that Natalie was hiding in the corners of his room, playing hide and seek, he would leave out plates of cookies and glasses of milk, weeping when he found them untouched the next morning. His former colleagues avoided him like a plague, and his once prestigious medical journals were used as case studies for narcissism and professional negligence. He tried to write a book of apology, but the words felt hollow and self-serving on the page. He realized that there was no more fix for what he had done. There was no more surgery that could mend a father's betrayal or a child's broken trust. Catherine's trial was a media circus that further cemented Logan's infamy. During the cross-examination, William revealed that Catherine had been embezzling money from Dustin's medical fund to pay for her own luxury shopping sprees. The struggling single mother was revealed to be a professional grifter who had targeted Logan specifically for his wealth and his easily manipulated ego. As the verdict of guilty was read, Catherine turned to look at Logan in the gallery, expecting him to save her one last time. But Logan only looked at her with a chilling emptiness. He finally saw her for what she was, a mirror of his own shallow desires. As she was led away to serve her 10-year sentence, Logan realized he had sacrificed his daughter for a woman who was nothing more than a parasite. Dustin, the innocent child caught in the crossfire of his mother's greed and Logan's arrogance, was eventually placed in a loving foster home far away from the scandal. He recovered from his leg injury, but he would always carry the physical and emotional scars of that night. Maria, in a gesture of profound grace, ensured that Dustin's college fund was fully funded through her foundation, on the condition that he never be told the full details of how his uncle Logan had failed his own daughter. She didn't want another child's life to be poisoned by the sins of the parents. This act of mercy was the final step in Maria's own healing process, proving that her heart was capable of a light that Logan's could never comprehend. The years turned into a decade, and the Natalie Goldson Memorial Blood Bank grew into an international network. Maria traveled the world, opening new facilities in underdeveloped regions. She was often asked how she survived the loss of her only child. Her answer was always the same: "I didn't survive it. I was transformed by it." Natalie didn't die so he could mourn. She died so he could see. She became a beacon of hope for thousands of mothers, her story a reminder that the human spirit can find beauty even in the most devastating tragedies. She had outplayed the darkness, outlasted the grief, and outlived the memory of the man who had failed her. Logan's final years were spent in a small, assisted living facility. He was known to the staff as the man who talks to the T-Rex. He would sit by the window for hours, watching the children play in the garden below, his hands constantly moving as if he were performing a phantom surgery. He had long since lost the ability to distinguish between his memories and his reality. In his mind, it was always Natalia's birthday, and he was always just about to pick up the phone. He died on a cold Tuesday afternoon, the same day of the week the accident had occurred. There was no more funeral, no more mourners, and no more headstone. His body was unclaimed, a final, fitting irony for a man who had unclaimed his own family when they needed him most. The narrative concludes with a final look at the Natalie Goldson statue in the center of the city. The bronze figure of a young girl holding a T-Rex tail and a birthday cake stands as a permanent reminder of the power of a child's love and the devastating cost of a father's pride. Every year on her birthday, the city places a crown of white lilies on the statue's head. The Natalie protocol continues to save hundreds of lives every year, a ripple effect of a tragedy that refused to be forgotten. Natalie Goldson was no more longer just a victim. She was a guardian of the city, a little girl whose superhero daddy finally, in a way he never intended, changed the world for the better. As the sun sets over the Natalie Goldson Memorial, the sky turns a brilliant shade of purple and orange. In the quiet of the evening, one can almost hear the faint sound of a child's laughter blowing through the trees. The story of the birthday that became a funeral is finished, but the legacy of the little girl who loved her daddy remains. Maria sits on her balcony, looking at the stars, a small smile on her face. She knows that somewhere, Natalie is finally celebrating her birthday with a cake that never crumbles and a superhero who never leaves. The queen has moved on, and her daughter is finally, eternally, at peace. The visual memory of the hospital halls, once filled with the echoes of Logan's arrogance, now houses a dedicated pediatric wing named after Natalie. The walls are painted with murals of dinosaurs and superheroes, a place of healing and joy that stands as a direct rebuttal to the coldness that once defined the space. The staff are trained not just in medicine, but in empathy, with Natalia's law hanging in every break room as a mandatory reminder of their duty to the invisible and the ignored. Maria visits the wing once a month, bringing toys and books, her presence a living testament to the fact that grief can be harnessed into a force of immense creation. She is no more longer the woman in the blood-stained dress. She is the architect of a new standard of care. The narrative's resonance was particularly felt in the legal community. William used the Goldson case to push for duty of care reforms that held medical professionals criminally liable for gross negligent abandonment during emergency responses. His work changed the legal landscape, ensuring that the "it's just my wife being dramatic" defense could never again be used to justify the loss of a life. William and Maria's partnership remained professional, yet deeply bonded by their shared victory for Natalie. He became the guardian of her foundation's legal interests, a silent sentinel who made sure that Logan's shadow never touched Maria's light again. They proved that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about rewriting the rules so the tragedy can't repeat. Even as the city moved on, the local legends about the Ernal girl persisted. People spoke of a spectral child seen wandering the crash site on rainy nights, holding a glowing T-Rex tail and guiding lost travelers back to the road. It became a piece of modern folklore, a story parents told their children about the importance of listening to those who cry out for help. The crash site itself was transformed into a safety garden, filled with reflective markers and the emergency call boxes. It was no more longer a place of death, but a place of prevention. Natalie had become the patron saint of the road, her memory a lighthouse for anyone caught in a storm. As Maria entered her twilight years, she began to write her own memoirs, titled The Superhero Sidekick, A Mother's Truth. The book was a global bestseller, not for its scandal, but for its raw exploration of forgiveness, not for Logan, but for herself. She wrote about the guilt of the driver, the pain of the survivor, and the eventual realization that Natalia's love was a gift that death couldn't take back. She spent her final chapters describing the peace she found in knowing that Natalia's name would be spoken with respect for generations to come. She was a woman who had seen the worst of humanity and responded with the best of it. In the final quiet moments of the narrative, we imagine the hospital at night. The lights are dimmed, and the nurses move with quiet efficiency. In the Natalie Goldson wing, a young doctor is sitting by the bed of a sick child, holding their hand and listening to their stories. He is not checking his watch. He is not answering his phone. He is simply being Sir. This is the true legacy of the birthday that became a funeral, a world where the heroes finally show up, and where the sidekicks are never left behind. The camera fades to a wide shot of the city, the lights of the Natalie Goldson Memorial shining brightly against the dark, a promise that the light will always find its way home. The internal peace Maria achieved was not a static thing, but a garden she tended every day. She realized that by refusing to let Logan's shadow consume her, she had allowed Natalia's light to grow even brighter. She often imagined what Natalie would look like as a teenager, as a young woman. She saw her in the eyes of the students who received her foundation's scholarships, in the steady hands of the surgeons her protocol had trained. Natalie was everywhere, a thousand versions of a life that was taken too soon, now blossoming in the lives of others. Maria knew that her own story was coming to an end, but she wasn't afraid. She was ready to go to the party Natalie had been planning for decades. The narrative concludes with a final image of the T-Rex toy, now bronze and placed at the foot of Natalia's statue. It is a symbol of the strength that comes from vulnerability, the courage to believe in heroes even when they fail. The story of Logan and Maria Goldson is a reminder that our choices are the only things we truly own, and that a single heartbeat can be the difference between a celebration and a tragedy. As the credits roll, we see a montage of families being reunited at the Natalie Goldson clinics, children laughing, and the parents holding them tight. The birthday cake is finally served, the superhero has arrived, and the sidekick is finally home. Thank you for walking this 60-minute path through the heart's absolute victory over the shadows. As the years moved into the second decade after the tragedy, the social impact of the Goldson scandal evolved into a cultural touchstone for accountability. The city's University of Medicine established a mandatory ethics and empathy residency program, using the Goldson files as the ultimate cautionary tale. Young doctors were required to visit the Natalie Goldson Memorial and reflect on the weight of their decisions. The "it's just an excuse" mentality was systematically purged from the local medical culture, replaced by a rigorous commitment to the universal triage principle. Logan's failure had ironically become the most effective teaching tool in the history of the institution, a dark foundation upon which a new, more compassionate generation of healers was built. Catherine's eventual release from prison was met with total silence. She tried to return to the city, hoping to reclaim some semblance of her old life, but the doors were all locked. Her name was a synonym for betrayal, her face a reminder of a child's death. She moved to a remote town, living under an assumed name, but the guilt or perhaps just the loss of her beauty and the status ate away at her. She spent her days working in a laundromat, the steam and the noise a constant reminder of the sterile hospital rooms she had once manipulated. She realized too late that you cannot build a life on the corpses of others and expect the structure to stand. The Natalie Goldson Memorial Blood Bank eventually expanded into research for artificial blood substitutes, seeking to solve the problem of renal scarcity once and for all. Maria remained the face of the foundation, her dignity and grace inspiring millions. She was invited to give a TED Talk on the anatomy of a second chance, where she spoke about how to find purpose in the wake of absolute betrayal. She didn't tell about Logan with hate. She talked about him as a person who lost his way, and how his loss became the world's gain. Her capacity for forgiveness, not of his actions, but of the hold they had on her, became a masterclass in psychological resilience. Dustin, now a young man, eventually discovered the truth of his past through an investigative report. He visited Maria at the foundation, his eyes full of a complicated grief. He felt the weight of a life that had been saved at the cost of another. Maria sat him down and told him the story, not as a horror tale, but as a story of responsibility. You don't owe me your life, Dustin. You owe it to Natalie to live a life that matters. She gave him a small, silver T-Rex lapel pin, a duplicate of the toy Natalie had loved. Dustin became an emergency medic, the first person on the scene of main accidents, his hands steady and his ears open to every cry for help. He was Natalia's legacy in the field, a superhero who finally showed up. The internal peace Maria found allowed her to finally dismantle the old house where she and Logan had lived. She donated the land to the city to be used as a public park for children with rare medical conditions. The House of Secrets was replaced by the Garden of Truth, a place where every child was seen and every parent was heard. On the day of the park's dedication, Maria felt a profound sense of closure. She stood in the center of the playground, watching the children run and play. And she realized that the birthday Natalie had wanted to celebrate was happening every single day in this park. She had successfully turned her daughter's funeral into a permanent celebration of life. The narrative's resonance extended into the world of literature and the film. A major motion picture was made based on Maria's life, starring an actress who had once worked as a nurse. The movie didn't focus on the scandal, but on the internal strength required to stay silent while being shamed. It won every major award, bringing the message of the Natalie Protocol to a global audience. Maria attended the premiere, sitting in the front row with William. As the credits rolled, she felt a sense of peace that she had never known. Her private pain had become a public healing, a transformation that made every second of her struggle worth the cost. As Maria entered her 80s, she spent more time in the quiet corners of the foundation, mentoring young women who had lost their children. She would sit with them and listen, her eyes full of the same empathy that had saved her own soul. When Maria finally passed away, the entire city went into a day of mourning. The street lights were dimmed for 10 minutes, and the bells of the university chapel rang 95 times, once for every year of her extraordinary life. Her funeral was a gathering of opposites. Former doctors who had found redemption sat next to humble workers who had been helped by her foundation. It was a testament to the sheer breadth of her influence, a woman who had walked in every world and left each one better than she found it. She was buried in the family vault next to Natalie, under a canopy of white lilies. Their headstones remained a permanent reminder that love is the only thing that survives the fire. The legacy of the Goldson scandal and the Natalie Protocol lived on through the digital age. Maria's children, the thousands of scholars and the patients she had helped, carried her mission forward. They utilized artificial intelligence to track rare blood types in real time, ensuring that no more one would ever again be stranded without a donor. The O'Reilly Sterling Goldson name, no, the Natalie Maria name remained a beacon of progress, a promise that the heart's absolute victory over the shadows is not just a dream, but a reality for those who are brave enough to believe. The story was finished, but the impact was eternal. The narrative concludes with a final look at the Natalie Goldson statue in the center of the city. The bronze figure of a young girl holding a T-Rex toy and a birthday cake stands as a permanent reminder of the power of a child's love. Every year on her birthday, the city places a crown of white lilies on the statue's head. Natalie Goldson was no more longer just a victim. She was a guardian of the city, a little girl whose superhero daddy finally, in a way he never intended, changed the world for the better. The camera fades to a wide shot of the city at night, the lights of the Natalie Goldson wing shining brightly against the dark, a promise that the light will always find its way home. As the final quiet notes of the narration fade into the sounds of a vibrant, healthy city, we see a final image of the T-Rex pinned in a phone case. This time, it's Dustin's phone, showing a call from a mother who respects him, loves him, and he sees him for who he truly is. The cycle of truth continues. The legacy is secure, and the room, as it always should be, is full of light. Goodbye to the birthday that became a funeral, and hello to the life that is. The queen has moved on, and her daughter is finally, eternally, at peace. Thank you for walking this path with Maria and Natalie. The visual memory of Logan Goldson fading into the background of Maria's life becomes absolute. We are left with the echoing footsteps of a woman who realized that her power was never something to be given away. Maria Carter's transformation from a betrayed wife to a visionary leader remains a beacon for anyone trapped in a toxic narrative. She proved that the most hardened circumstances can be softened by a single, bold decision to say no more to a lie. Her life became a lighthouse for others lost in the storm of emotional manipulation, showing them that there is always a path back to dignity. William's role in this saga was not that of a rescuer, but of a partner who recognized a peer. He didn't just save Maria, he provided the space for her to save herself. His unyielding support was the foundation upon which her new kingdom was built. Together, they redefined what it meant to be a power couple, proving that true strength lies in mutual respect and the shared pursuit of a higher purpose. They were the architects of a new era, and their influence would be felt for centuries in the city they both loved. The story of the Buchanan necklace, or in this case, the Ernal blood, became a part of the city's cultural fabric, often referenced in songs and the stories about the unexpected nature of fate. It was a reminder that the smallest actions, a decision to bid on a piece of jewelry, A decision to help a woman in need can have ripples that change the course of history. People would often walk past the museum where the artifacts of the case were kept and feel a sense of hope, a reminder that even in the most competitive and cold environments, there is the potential for something beautiful to be restored.